We're here at the big 5G event in Austin, Texas. We're winding down the event, so this will serve as your notebook dump for the week of whatever week it happens to be. Look it up. It's Big 5G. End of the event. This is our event wrap up and our notebook dump for the week. I'm Phil Harvey. I'm an editor here at Light Reading. Joining me is Kelsey Zeiser, Ian Morris, and Mike Dano. And it is great to have you guys here. Thanks for being at the show. To make this super simple, because there's an awful lot going on in the communications landscape and here particularly at the event, maybe we should just, starting with Kelsey, we'll just go down and have one takeaway from the event. Something you've either learned, something you've verified that you already knew, or something that you're not sure about that people have said and you're still checking on it.
I thought Evan with Omdia, his presentation yesterday morning was really interesting, and he was talking about how service providers still need to figure out how to best monetize 5G, and that purchases of 5G phones has been really helpful, but we need to go a step further in other opportunities for monetization. So
yeah,
I thought that was interesting.
I suppose it's the Open RAN topic for me.
Yeah.
There's been quite a lot of talk about that, which is to be expected, but there was quite an interesting presentation by Ericsson's CTO for North America on, them trying to show more commitment basically to the process. They have this new proposal that's been called Next Generation Low Layer Split. I think it has a more official name, but which they're sort of pushing as a solution to some of the problems of the existing spec. As I understand it, it's a little bit controversial. There are people who see it as possibly a delaying tactic, or there's concern that it could have, what if it becomes sort of overly dominant within that specification, and it's loaded with Ericsson's IP, for instance, which is rejected. It's actually got some fairly good comments that I'm just putting together at the moment to sort of. But I think it's kind of really interesting that it sort of happened here in a way. There's kind of a lot going on with them turning up and saying we're all about Open RAN now, and here's the proof of it. And they were on a panel as well, sort of saying similar things. But
you got to assume they're in a tough spot, because it's like the whole idea of Open RAN and open networks is to unseat incumbents, and they've been the incumbent, and now they're trying to get into the open networks to not only help their customers but be kind of in step with the industry. But almost every move they make in the space is going to be viewed with a more than the usual amount of skepticism.
Yeah.
So they're in a tough spot. So it'll be interesting to see sort of how things are received and where it goes next. And also, I'm kind of curious as to whether Open RAN ends up being something that becomes more of a dominant technology in things like private networks, and maybe not so much in mass market broad deployments.
Yeah.
Dish talked a little bit about Open RAN too, and wasn't their message kind of it's not that complicated?
Yeah, and I just met with Mark Moran now, actually. He kind of said the same thing. It's really not that complicated, but he was saying that they have an operations team that is 50 people. So his comparison for an operator of a similar size, like traditional, would be 2,000. So, and he said it's all based on sort of, people talk about systems integration being really hard, and he's sort of insisting it isn't. If you have APIs, you're not actually writing software, you're kind of putting stuff together, and if the APIs are there, it shouldn't be that hard to kind of assemble. But you hear totally different messages from other parts of the industry, obviously, from people trying to do this. So.
Yeah, exactly. Rakuten had a presentation here as well, and the number of employees that they have in their network division has declined now. They used to be 250, and now it's 200, according to their latest chart. So they can do more with less, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've said a similar thing, that if you look at like NTT Docomo or KDDI, they'd have sort of thousands of people on that side. So this is where, I suppose, once they get over the hassle of actually building stuff and the capex spike that's going on, which is reflected in earnings and just makes them look miserable at the moment, maybe we will see some of these automation savings and this efficiency of having only kind of 50 people or 200 people. Maybe it will
The jury's still out.
I mean,
but they're getting tired.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Moran was saying it just takes time, but and every year we meet and it's like the same the same message.
Yeah,
And,
good.
meanwhile, the technology industry is coming up with new things like ChatGPT all the time, and
Right,
there's
yeah.
there's a new thing every year, and telecom's still trying to get open interfaces to work. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a different scenario. So your takeaway is 5G monetization is important. We need it now. Yours is Open RAN is great, or could be
not.
great.
Yeah.
We don't know. We'll see.
We'll see.
What about you?
Yeah, so there's lots going on at the show, obviously. But I actually had a really interesting conversation with the wholesale team from T-Mobile. And they were at this show last year. They basically had a keynote session that was like, we're open for business.
Mm-hmm.
Our network is available for wholesale purchase. And since then, they've signed a couple of new MVNO deals. In fact, they bought an MVNO named Mid Mobile, the Ryan Reynolds one. But they also inked an MVNO deal with a company called Helium Mobile. And Helium is one of those like super weird decentralized wireless companies that's trying to get to pay you to put in your own cell tower, and then that's how they're going to make a network, is by paying everyone to run their own cell tower on the top of their house. But what I thought was,
Don't you have? Is there an upfront cost for the consumer?
yeah,
Yeah.
you buy the cell tower, so
Wow.
you pay for it.
Don't they pay you in like
Board apes or
Cryptocurrency.
something?
Yeah.
Oh, cryptocurrency.
like
What
have enough
could
coffee
possibly
with
go wrong?
Lord?
Well,
This
here's
sounds like a really
it does
dodgy
exactly. And so that was
Pay you
literally
monopoly money.
my question to them was like, come on, guys,
Yeah.
like really? And what they said, and what I thought was interesting though was what their response was, which was, we're here to like help foster innovation. Maybe this won't work, but we're in it. We're hoping that one of these crazy ideas is successful, and that is our job as a wholesaler, is like to provide them access, to give them the tools that they need to, or they could use to be successful. And like and what's really interesting is that, especially here in the US, historically, carriers never talked about the MVNOs that they supported. In fact, they
Right.
wouldn't even admit that their network was powering a particular MVNO.
Right.
And now here's T-Mobile coming out and saying, like, yeah, we're supporting this network. We hope that they are successful. We'll try to help them in whatever way we can. And I even asked them, like, is there any chance that you would ever integrate those Helium hotspots that people have designed into your own network? And they said, well, maybe. Like, we'll see.
Yeah.
And which is you would never hear that previously, an operator even consider that kind of thing. So I feel like that approach is one that I think is interesting and a little bit new, and it's a little bit of an acknowledgement of like, operators can't do everything. They do need to be open-minded for some of this stuff to actually work. It was, I don't know, it was a little bit of a ray of like light in a mostly dour outlook of like, well, it doesn't really work and it's not
Yeah.
going to happen. And
Do you think the change in the attitude of acknowledging the MVNOs is that to show that they're more innovative, or
Yeah.
I'm just curious why the culture change of,
They admitted that. They were like, yeah, normally we would never talk about our MVNOs, and now it's different now. We've got a new team in place. We have this sort of new emphasis around our wholesale business following the Sprint merger. They basically let them go, do what they're going to do and try to foster business. And they admitted that it's not easy to sell wholesale access. There's actually not a lot of MVNOs out there right now. And so they're kind of trying to like drum up some business by actually being,
okay.
open and engaging, rather than we're the best and everybody else is second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I like the idea of them fostering innovation, and perhaps it also takes the sting out of these companies that are on their network could be seen as disruptive to their business, but from a shareholder point of view, if you're powering the network and you're making that a selling point, suddenly I feel safer investing in something like T-Mobile, because you're like, oh, okay, they're not only powering the broad consumer network and they have a enterprise side, but they're also helping these disruptive networks, or they have a hand in that somehow. So it doesn't feel like they're getting outrun by anyone. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see. Other kind of points I came across during this was during the show was how interesting and just how staggering the scale is of some enterprise enterprises in private 5G. I was talking to the to a gentleman from John Deere about the 5G network they're in the process of rolling out in their various manufacturing facilities. And these are, I think he said something like 60 something facilities, but these are like massive places where they build combines, tractors, and everything, and how they're just going to eventually, replace miles and miles of Ethernet cable with sensors and 5G connected devices and run it on a private 5G network. And how he was kind of walking me through the process of like how they came to the decision of using cellular versus Wi-Fi and why that was better than Ethernet and that sort of thing. And it sort of dawned on me that when you run a certain, any enterprise activity, be it manufacturing or whatever, when you run it at a certain scale, you don't think about mobility as much. In the past, you might not have thought about mobility. You would just wire everything out there. But, these days they're trying to be more nimble, more flexible. They might have to downsize in one area and upsize in another, depending on where demand is. And to do that in a wired network is just exceedingly complex. And he's like, now I can redeploy software engineers. I can redeploy people on the manufacturing floor. I can redeploy the tools themselves. And as soon as I move them to where they need to be, they're connected, they're on the network, I can see everything, and I can monitor it. I didn't really think about that before as a knock-on benefit of private 5G. I do wonder how well the carriers will get at communicating that to other industries, because John Deere's kind of a little more future forward in terms of how it thinks about, its business and its place in the world and that sort of thing. CES, they announced autonomous tractors and stuff like that. So they're kind of out there. But I wonder if some of these older industries that are less connected will come around to that realization. If they do, it could be, quite a big business, for the carriers on their 5G network.
Yeah, that agricultural market, I think, is one that's really gone all in on IoT, isn't it? And
yeah,
like you wouldn't think necessarily of tractors and people driving combine harvesters around fields being especially. It wouldn't necessarily stand out as a sector to take advantage of this first, but it has done. I mean, John Deere is like really kind of maybe one of the most advanced tech companies in the world.
It seems like it would be something that I've always thought of it as like, set it and forget it type of thing. Like they do they're in a seasonal business, it comes around every year. It's the same thing every year. But what he was saying is that, well, first of all, some of this stuff could be disrupted with climate change. They need to be more flexible anyway. But secondly, he was saying that the planting and harvesting windows, primary windows for farmers is so small, like maybe 10 days, in a season, that any amount of time that their gear isn't working or that they don't know what's going on or that they can't find it and diagnose it quickly is, some huge percentage of that farm's income for the whole year, gone. And so, if you lose a day, that's 1/10 of your income, gone in one day. So having the equipment, not only the uptime is super important, but everything that has to do with keeping that equipment in service and in use is important. I think that maybe that's what's needed to sell private 5G and IoT, the IoT business a little bit more, because I think talking about the network itself is great. But I think highlighting those like problems that they're solving is so much more interesting. It's a much more compelling story.
Yeah.
Okay, any other takeaways or fun things you saw at the event? We'll go ahead and wrap up. Nope? You're done?
I've been scootering everywhere.
Yeah.
Really?
I've gotten really good at it, and I always, in my head, is Mike's voice saying, "Bend your knees."
Yeah, keep your knees. Okay, soft knees, soft knees.
Soft knees.
And do you wear your teeth guard, right? Your mouth guard? You put that in too?
No,
you didn't bring.
that. I'll have to.
Okay, all right.
put that
I'll let
in
you
my
borrow one of
pocket.
mine. I brought my.
Some good lint on
Yeah.
it.
No, I just a couple extra.
I haven't done it yet, but I found out that Ruan Scooter's in as well.
Oh,
Wow.
really?
Yeah, he was saying it's
Maybe
great
you and I
fun,
can
like
do
scootering in on
together,
these.
All right, well,
you got to be careful because they go up to 15 miles an hour. But
scooter race. It is on the big 5G scooter race.
Yeah, I was kind of going, whoa. And I looked to my left, and this guy's just like flying down. And I
yeah, that was Mark Ruan.
okay.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there for now. We'll see you all online at lightreading.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next year near Dallas at the Network Next show. Bye for now.